Hey everyone, Live Lock here. In the second of what I think would be 3 experimental runs for Mythic Plus with different builds and talents, I just did the one about Doomwinds, and this one is about what people were calling the meme build, because you use an Elemental Shaman legendary, Skybreaker's Fiery Demise, because it gives you 50% buff on your 50% crit on your flame shocks when you're Venthyr, which means that you have massive chain harvest CDR. So I tried this out in an HoA, and it went a lot better than Doomwinds did, at least. I don't think good enough to use over PLA, but it is actually, I think, probably more viable than Doomwinds is, for better or worse. Let me just pause it and highlight some things. So we run in, we do this shard pack. I've got this add-on over here called Mixed Scrolling Battle Text that aggregates the damage values so you can easily see them, and you can see like that first chain harvest did like 80k. They usually do around like 100k. I'm not sure why it was lower this time, but no matter. The Fire Nova, which is like a bulk of damage, it's like Chain Harvest and Fire Nova are going to be actually here. You can actually see the exact breakdowns for this pull. It's top is Fire Nova, Flame Shock, of course, and then Chain Harvest. I think this is like a minute long pull or something, and I get like 3 chain harvests. So yeah, you can see the pull counter up here. I think I chain harvest around like 15 seconds or so. So I'm coming up on the second chain harvest already right now, and it's actually a really useful chain harvest because I'm getting pretty low. I have Siphon Life, so I have to pot there. But I think this is a really interesting build. It's very different from the PLA Necrolord build in terms of like the properties that you have when you're playing this, for a couple of reasons. When you're running this build, I guess I don't have a Covenant tracker thing up here, just talents on the top left, but you run the same talents as you would if it were PLA. I'm still doing Lashing Flames, right? Yeah, I'm still doing Lashing Flames and Hot Hand, so that's more or less the same. I'm still spamming Lava Lash. They aren't as strong, obviously, so it's more of just like a single target filler at that point. But you run Theatar, and you take Wasteland Propriety, which gives you like a 6% verse buff, and everyone else in your party a 3% verse buff every time you use Chain Harvest. So I'm probably going to use it here again. Although I think I heal myself like an idiot. So yeah, so I should have used Chain Harvest because I would have just healed myself. But this is like the first time I've ever really run this build before. But I'll use it, I guess, in a few seconds. Yeah, you give everybody in your group like a 3% burst buff, like pretty often. I looked at the logs, and you can see here. Actually, I can bring this up as well. If you look at the logs here, Wasteland Propriety on that first pull had about a 50% uptime, but this whole first part was running, so it's closer to like 70, I think, 70% or so. If the big catch is if you can make sure that you're pulling at least 6 targets every pull. So I think you really have to think about using this in like a Halls, or I guess a DOS could be okay. It would be better, obviously, if you would just skip most of that middle wing, the Gnome wing, because that one has like the worst pulls. Everything else is, I guess the Car wing isn't great, but it's like kind of short relative to the rest of the dungeon. You usually have enough mobs in there. Mists is okay. Mists, for whatever reason, is just really good for PLA. Like, I can routinely do 17k in Mists right now, but I can't actually do 17k with this build in Mists. Maybe it's just because the damage amp from the first boss is, you know, very important to the overall. I'm not exactly sure, but it definitely is not as good in Mists. It's good here, though. I got more overall here than I did with PLA, and I contributed like a ton of healing. Like, you can see, like, every time you press Chain Harvest, you heal like a massive amount. And another thing with Theatar, so you only have 2 potency conduits, which is like, okay, that's fine, because you trade off the potency conduits for group utility, basically, and a damage buff, to be fair. Like 6% is oh yeah, I forgot to lust on that first pull as well. So we lust here. I keep on forgetting to lust. I still am not really a shaman at heart, but yeah, Theatar gives you so you don't have 2 potency, you do have the group utility, and that seems okay because, I mean, you wouldn't want to just like recreate the same circumstances that you had with PLA, because otherwise you just use PLA. So what does this offer uniquely? It offers utility and off healing, So being able to give people verse buffs is like a pretty unique thing that you can't really do with PLA. You're pretty selfish as PLA with Necrolord, but you also have the avoidance buff with you have the, I don't think I show avoidance here. Yeah, I should show avoidance here, but I have more mastery. Sorry, I have more versatility. Like now I have 17% verse, so I often have 17% verse, and because I have the well-fed buff from Theatar, as well as I think I probably get verse. I don't know what I got. Looking at my stats, I probably got, yeah, this is probably a crit buff from the food that Theatar gives you. You get the avoidance from well-fed, so I have like 9% avoidance, and I have like 17% verse on average. I am way more tanky in this build than I am on PLA, so I can live like a long time. And like here, look, I heal us up because I have another chain harvest. This pull isn't quite big enough to make it optimal, but it's still doing like a ton of damage. And so this is the second guard pull, right? So if I just yoink in the damage meters for a second, you see the second shard at 432, and the damage done here is top chain harvest. So in this tiny pull, which is 50 seconds long, I get 3 chain harvests that do 300,000 damage. More than Flame Shock, more than Fire Nova. It's actually kind of like nuts. It's really easy to play. It's not like with Necrolord and PLA, you basically have to, if you have to, well, okay, so with PLA, you do want to make sure that you have like 5 Maelstroms so you can get in, you can do your PLA buff. But the bad thing about PLA, which, I mean, it's not that bad. PLA is still awesome. PLA is definitely still better than this, I think. But the bad thing about PLA is the bad thing about damage windows. Like, you have damage windows, and you have to respect them and use them. You have 12 seconds of that haste buff, and you better get in there and do some stuff. It's mitigated slightly. Ooh, another chain harvest did 123k. That's awesome. Yes, so it's mitigated slightly by Flame Shock, I think, being haste buffed, which means that you don't have to really, like, you could actually benefit a lot from the haste if you only have your Flame Shocks out there. And Flame Shock is like your top overall ability as PLA Necro, so that isn't that bad. It's definitely the most forgiving damage window I've ever seen. Looks like our guy, so okay, look, our blood DK dies, and I live. Like, I got hit, but I'm fine. I have a ton of verse. I have a lot of avoidance. I think the avoidance didn't really help on that one, but look, I have a ton of healing that I don't have to sacrifice my damage for. So I took another hit, instantly healed up everybody with Chain Harvest. Now everybody has a verse buff, so they're taking less damage and doing more damage. And here's another Chain Harvest. That was like, I got another Chain Harvest in like 10 seconds. That was kind of crazy. But yeah, with this build. So I wanted to try this build out. Like, I think when I first made the Shaman, except I didn't have enough gear to actually spec out for crit, but now I have enough gear that I can build a crit set at 33% crit. I have a 3% crit buff from Theatar right now. So now I can actually use this build, and you can tell, I think, okay, we'll bring in the good old damage meters again. You can tell Flame Shock's crit rate is 90% right now. So every single tick, almost, of Flame Shock is just giving me CDR on my Chain Harvest. So I'm just getting so many Chain Harvests, and Chain Harvest is so easy to use. Like, you don't have to worry about messing up Chain Harvest, right? Like, the only question is, like, should I hold it a little bit for some damage event? Which, like, if the shard is about to go into a thrash, then the answer is probably yeah. Like, why not? You know. But every second you hold it is a lot of CDR. And look at that, like, we were all low, and now we're all full. I think here, I'm doing as much healing as the priest. So this is actually like a really fun build. Okay, so what do you sacrifice? You sacrifice the flexibility of PLA, which means you can't do funnel, and the single target is really bad. So what you're good at is, like, off-healing and consistent AoE. I think the AoE actually does rival that of PLA. I mean, just based on the overalls here, like, it's comparable. I think I think I finished this one in details with around 16k overall, which is like about what I get with PLA. I think I'm usually around 15 or 16k right now. I still have no tier set, so that's kind of like, you know, where this guy is right now. For some reason, it's always lower in the run in Warcraft logs, but if I go to the overall for the dungeon is about 13.5, as opposed to, this is a PLA run that I did. And if I go to the overall for this run, it's about 12.5. So it's actually technically higher than my 20 PLA, but it's a lower key. Hard to compare, but it's in the ballpark. It's not like with Doomwinds where it was actually a large difference. Like I did way more damage in every scenario, basically, besides like a very niche scenario with Doomwinds as PLA. Whereas here, I'm actually very competitive in terms of just damage on sustained AoE. Given that it's certain fights, like I could never run this obviously in, but look how many chain harvests. This is so crazy. Like you get them back so fast. I could never run this in Theater of Pain. I would never try to run it in Theater of Pain. I won't run it in Mists either. Just because a single target is just so bad, and there are long boss fights, and there are a couple of pulls in the maze. You get at least 3 pulls in the maze that aren't 5 targets. Like you have a single target guy in the maze, and you have probably 2 packs in the maze that are only 4 mobs. So I won't bother trying to use this there, because I really want 6 targets for the CDR. Like the whole point is I need that CDR, which means I need 6 targets for Flame Shock to tick on. So here you can see how bad the single target is. Well, you can kind of see how bad it is, because I took one of the gargoyles to Stoneborn people to pad. Me and the rogue each have one of the patterned gargoyles here. I don't think I die. I think I step in that though. No, I don't. Okay. Sometimes my little pinky toe is in there and I just take full damage, and sometimes I don't. But you can see, like, yeah, me and the rogue each have gargoyles here. So he's doing like, 6 or 7k more than me with his gargoyle. So just like, imagine that we each have constant gargoyle overhead. And this warrior has like, I think he has 4 set. He's pumping the entire time. He's doing way more damage than everybody. But yeah, okay, so now the gargoyles are gone. So now you'll see this go down to like nothing basically. Let me see if I can, while we're doing the dance here, I can pull up the damage for this first boss, and you can see that it's pretty actually consistent. So it filters out the gargoyle damage in Warcraft logs, so you can just tell like what it is normally. And I've got like 9k here, whereas the rogue had like almost 3k higher than what I had, which is where I would have been if I were a PLA. Usually do about the same single target when he's spec'd out as his Mythic Plus stuff. So, but it's a Fort Week thing. I would never do this if it wasn't for Fort Week. I still don't know if I would do this like in a serious key, just because like I can't imagine a key where I would want to sacrifice the ability to do funnel. Like I think of DOS, for example, and if you're an Ardenweld and you mistakenly pull a Matriarch as PLA, I can actually just delete the Matriarch, and we don't have to worry about having a Mega Bolster Matriarch after the fact. You don't plan on pulling the Matriarch, but if someone does, then you have the option. Look at all this healing. It's crazy. Like, I'm basically doing half the healing as the healer. But yeah, so there are always runs. There are always pulls in AoE dungeons where you want these. I think. I mean, like, look at halls. I mean, the shard pulls are perfect for PLA, right? Like, you pull in a couple of the little golem dudes, those little stone ankle biter dudes, and you use them for funnel, and you can just like, pump huge lava lashes into the shards. Right now, I can't do that at all. I can't help, like, even in the slightest with shards or large mobs. And the rest of this, I think the rest of this is more or less the same. I think I probably get big burst here on Echelon. So let me switch over to Echelon so we can see a summary of how Echelon ends up looking. This is not surprising. I think these are probably representative of the ad phases that come out, which probably says that I hold my Chain Harvest, which is the second highest damage for... I only do it 3 times. So looks like I missed the first ad wave actually with Chain Harvest. So I must have used it already, like here or something like that. Yeah, so I do use it here. I could have used it on the ad phase, and maybe I should have, but I guess we probably have enough AoE. Yeah. I mean, you don't really need to. The only reason to hold it, I guess, on this key level, on this week, is like because you want to pad more. Like look at this guy. Oh my god, they just like mistakenly kill all of the ads when they do a whirlwind or whatever they do. But I am definitely not doing great damage here. I think the rogue messed up or something, because he's usually higher than me here. But this is also a nice place where, like, every single time those ads die, let's see if I do it next time. Every single time that the ads die, they do massive AoE damage. So if we were doing something where, like, perhaps we wanted to recover quickly from the ads dying, but we didn't have healer cooldowns, so I healed myself there, I guess, because I stepped in a puddle, so I didn't save it for the time I was hinting towards. But we could do something like that where, like, I take one burst phase as a heal, and the healer takes another burst phase. You can think of something like DOS during the thrash of that red enraged mob. Maybe that I can basically heal one of those myself. We just get low enough, use personals, and I can top us off with chain heal and whatever hots or little stuff the healer can contribute. That would be like one viable strategy maybe. But like I said, like having PLA seems like it's just too much of a benefit. I think the one thing that I want to skip to is the big room, the church room, where we have, yeah, so we'll skip ahead past, yeah, here we go, here's the church room. This is the third boss. We will kill the third boss, because this is the most boring boss in the entire world. And this is a pretty big AoE room. I think I do fairly well in here, which is not a huge surprise. I think I want to just get a little bit of Maelstrom on these guys. I usually go to this top left corner to focus. I did pretty poorly as a Shadow Priest here. So I do my first Chain Harvest, yeah. Because like as a Shadow Priest, I never know what to do here. Like, nothing's clumped up, so I can't get like giant AoE. I could wait until they all turn into little guys and just like AoE down the little guys and not contribute at all to the killing the Tormented Souls. And that might be more efficient for my damage and better for my overall. But it feels like I'm kind of, doing something I shouldn't be doing. Like, I should be killing these little dudes so that they don't turn into the guys in the first place. But here it's pretty easy. Like, every time I press Chain Harvest, it's definitely going to get full value. I've got more than enough targets to have 6 Flame Shocks on the entire time. So I'm getting a lot of value. I'm not sure how many of these things I've had to kill so far. So if I go over here, I get 4 Chain Harvests during this pull. This pull is about 2 minutes long. Once we run out of ads for Flame Shock, then I obviously run out of Chain Harvests. So like PLA is kind of nice because you turn Flame Shocks into single target damage. This build turns Flame Shocks into AoE damage. Like the more Flame Shocks you have, like the more times you can do AoE. And with PLA, it's just like juiced up lava lashes instead. So now I have like now I'm just like I'm a sad single target Enhancement Shaman with no special single target abilities. So I'm just using like Flame Shock, Frost Shock, Storm Strike, occasionally Lava Lash, which only hits for 3k now because I don't have any PLA legendary. So you're definitely like you're awful single target, and you've basically just got to like depend on like these big burst windows with AoE to make up your damage, which means you would never run this on. You definitely never run this on Tyran. So now you have the last fight here. We can tell. We'll just see like how bad the last fight is, and then maybe we'll look at the comparison of the single target between this last fight as PLA and the last fight as a Chain Harvest build or Stormbreaker's Fiery Demise build. Here, yeah, nothing. I mean, everyone's done this fight like a million times now. I guess this is also kind of nice when you're running this build because you can off-heal the statue phase, but it's a little bit awkward because you have to actually have Chain Harvest up for that time. So like right now I have it up, but do I want to use it? Because I won't have it up in single target again for the statue phase. So now I've got to decide like, should I hold or not? And I think holding is probably right here because like it's not that much single target damage. It does like I don't know like 10k or so I think, but it gives everybody a big DR and it heals them. So this is probably the best place to use it. But I'm waiting for the chance to use it, but the healer is just like healing everybody up. So I'm just like okay, whatever. I send it out. So okay, what was that? That was like about a minute, and now we'll see how much CDR I guess I get. I probably get it back by the second time the statues come around. or this little middle statue soak face comes around. I'll skip to see that. So okay, we do not have it for the second statue phase. Maybe we'll get it like halfway through. No, I still have 20 seconds. But yeah, it sucks for single target. It's like you kind of just take a break for single target. So you better be really good in AoE. And it's not that much better in. I'd say it's like probably slightly worse or as good in some situations as PLA, but you get the awesome like utility benefits. So if there's ever a time, one time I would definitely run this is if I'm running low geared players through Mythic Plus keys, then like having the off healing to make up for like like the bad tank and the bad healer could be pretty nice. Oh, Lavish Harvest, big. That's my conduit for this build actually. That's pretty nice. Yeah. Also, crit is nice because everything is like crit based in this build. Like Chain Harvest scales off a crit. Flame Shocks are crit. Everything is just crit. The low mastery means that you have like kind of weak fire novas, unfortunately. But having Theatar, having that little umbrella guy, means you get like juiced up mastery, so you can kind of store, bank on your fire novas and your whatever's for that window where you can send your fire nova instead. It's not as good, and it'll never be as good. But hey, the damage is actually not bad. I think it's viable in some situations. I don't know of a high key I would ever choose to run it in. Low keys, I might do it just because I might want to give the off healing, but it's also pretty fun. So far, this is the third build I've experimented with, where the first was PLA, which is awesome. The second was Doomwinds, which is really fun, but not very viable in my mind. Yeah, I was looking at the the 4 set of the Fury, where I'm like, please have 4 set to justify the difference, and he did. So thank God. And then this one was like the third one, which was also very fun, also less viable than PLA, but like kind of unique and viable in niche circumstances that aren't very like push oriented. I'm gonna do one more actually, because I had to do normal raid to try and get some set pieces, and I played Night Fae, which is actually a lot of fun too. So I want to try Night Fae out in like maybe a Theater of Pain, just to see like how it goes. I'm not sure, something with lots of bosses and with like not a lot of AoE. We'll see how that goes, but I'll put that out pretty soon. Yeah, let me know if you guys actually see these builds as somewhat viable, or you enjoy using them in your free time. I'm not sure, but good luck everybody. See you next time.